Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar number 10 of the Zero Emission Building Academy, which is a partnership between the European Copper Institute, the Building Performance Institute Europe, and the ECTP, European Construction and Technology Platform. The aim of this academy is to share information related to decarbonization of buildings, to accompany this transition. We are in the context now where the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive has been revised. We had in a previous webinar, Stefan Moser from DG Energy and the assistant of Karen Köf, the rapporteur on the EPBD, to present the big evolution with the revision. And this series of webinar will continue to share information that is useful for everyone working on the implementation, also at national level. And today we will speak about two key instruments that are in the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, the Energy Performance Certificates and the Renovation Passport. So the Energy Performance Certificate is there since a long time. The Renovation Passport is a new instrument in the EPBD. And to speak about this, I'm pleased to welcome Peter Melvig. Peter is Senior Project Manager at IFO, that's the Institute for Research in Energy and Environment in Germany, in Heidelberg. And he represents today the project IB Road to EPC. That's a EU-funded project that has worked on the link between EPCs and Renovation Passports, but Peter will explain it better than me. So I'm pleased to give him the floor directly now for the presentation. And after his presentation, we will come back to your questions and address these to him. So Peter, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Quentin. Yes, and thanks for your interest today. You already see my screen? I don't think so.
Not yet. And now we see it.
Now it comes. Yes, thank you for your interest. I'm especially as it's in many countries short before Easter break and the last hours are ticking. Yes, this bringing together energy performance certificates and building renovation passports. I mean, it's not the first thing you think of when you see these both instruments. They're quite different and should be, but we have this Horizon 2020 funded project, IB Road to EPC. It's a project of 12 partner countries and partners from 9 countries. You see these 6 implementing countries, the darker ones, and further countries that attend the project. Maybe for the name, very briefly, IB Road was the individual building roadmap, and that was a predecessor project where the same consortium, or almost the same, worked on developing a building renovation passport in the true sense of the meaning. And this 2 EPC means we bring this building renovation passport to EPCs. And the idea behind that, I will briefly show. I mean, it was a 3-year project. We're almost at the end. It runs until August. So I will try to put these 3 years into 20 minutes. But maybe first, what was the idea? We have, of course, in the EPBD, these core elements. I think you all know them. The EPC itself, of course, is one major element in building policies. And at the same time, you see on the other side, the building renovation passport, which is rather new, and we think a very important element of it. So to bring really deep information to building owners and guide them to the way to the building target. And also new, I think you all know it, are the MAPs, the minimum performance standards. And we see there is a certain link from EPCs to the MAPs because, yes, the buildings have to prove compliance with the MAPs through EPCs. So these 2 elements are certainly linked. Furthermore, we will have these national building renovation plans also introduced in the new EPBD. So more like a national plan how to reach the targets in the building sector, and still the building logbooks. And yes, we thought these 5 elements, they stand a bit in parallel next to each other. But of course, they have to be linked. So, but how do we achieve that? How can they be aligned? How do we make sure that everything follows this NBRP, this National Building Renovation Plan? Or how do BRPs and EPCs come together? That was the main focus, the main idea behind it. And if we dive a bit deeper into that, we see, I mean, of course, the EPC, you know it's an informational tool, and it informs building owners about the current energy performance, of course, nothing else. It still gives general renovation recommendations, sometimes very good, sometimes a bit shallow. It's a static document. I think in most countries, it's a paper printout. As I said, it proves compliance with the maps. That's a new function, a new feature from it. And it's really a mandatory tool under certain circumstances, but you have to have it if you sell or rent a building. You have to have it. On the other hand, the Building Renovation Passport, it's really a customized energy consulting tool. So it gives a long-term perspective, ideally to the goal, to the target in 2050. It carries detailed information on performance and comfort, and even additional specifications. And it can be a plan that's stepwise. So most renovations are not done in one go, but step by step to the until the target is reached, which brings new obstacles to deep renovation. But this is something the BRP can tackle and can handle. Of course, the renovation recommendations are not only for the next renovation, but for all renovation steps in the future, and they have to be aligned with the long-term targets. And here we see there's a certain alignment between former LTRS, now NBRP, with the Building Renovation Passport. So the recommendations have to fit with the overall target. The recommendations, of course, have to fulfill the maps now. If maps come into force, they can be a static or an online document, depends, but they're always a voluntary consultation. And what we now do is to put something in between. So, of course, we take the information on the current energy performance and use it for this IB road to EPC. And we take a lot of information from the BRP, but not exactly this one, but simplified or optional or automized. So you see, this is something in between. It's not as deep as the Building Renovation Passport, but much more than the EPC. So to make this fit for every country, I mean, every country has a certain ecosystem between the EPC and maybe energy audits or what is already there. So if IB Road to EPC wants to fit in between there, it must be able to shift a bit, maybe get closer to the EPC or closer to the BRP. But you have to be aware of the implications this will have. So if you want to have the IB Road to EPC very close to the EPC, this meant you can have a huge market coverage. So you get very far to the left, and EPCs, depending on the country, but they reach 10,000s or 100,000s of buildings per year. So a large market coverage. But in order to achieve that, you need low prices. People will not be ready to pay 2,000 euros, and for information they get along the way. Otherwise, if it's too expensive, you get automatically to the right part and you lose market coverage. And of course, this interacts with the effort it causes. So if the effort is for issuance is pretty short, pretty low, you can achieve these low costs and the high market coverage. And the other end is more like a real energy audit. And that takes time, it's expensive, but you reach maybe only some 1,000 buildings per year. So we don't exactly say where to place IB Road to EPC. This is up to implementing countries, so they can decide. And we intentionally build IB Road to EPC in a flexible way to adapt to everything that's there. So very broad overview of what IB Road to EPC does at all, what the idea is behind it. So what we want is these 5 questions. Building owners should get answers to that. So what should be done? What should happen in my building to make it fit for the future? And these are the renovation recommendations themselves. So insulate your walls or exchange your boiler against a heat pump. And this is not automated. This is a decision from the issuer, from the energy expert, ideally together with the building owner, because the building owners, they know their buildings best. And maybe they have a plan on their own already. So this, what should be done, this is basic, and this should be done by humans, not automatically. The next question is when. So usually you would say if your roof is 60 years old, then it's time to renew it and also insulate it. But there's more to that question, when to do it. And in IB Road to EPC, we have predefined time steps. So it's not completely up to the issuer, but say if one country has national targets for 2030, or 2040, we will see something of that in the European level soon, then these time steps are predefined in IB Road to EPC, and the task of the issuer is to assign certain renovations to certain time steps. So that's much easier. They don't really have to calculate this has to be 2027 or 32, but these time steps are already there, and he just assigns the measures to that. The next question is, how do I renovate? How do I do it? And this is usually the technical specification. So with insulations is the insulation thickness or U value that you get. Or maybe if you have a heat pump, what type of heat pump should that be? And this is exactly what has to be aligned with the national building renovation plans. So if the renovation plan foresees all buildings have to go close to zero emission buildings, they must not insulate only with 8 centimeters, for instance. So these U values, they are aligned with every country's tasks or plans, and they come automatically in IB Road to EPC. They fill in automatically. Then we have another question: what should I be aware of? What do I have to watch along the way? And these are, of course, legal obligations on the one hand, or long-time targets. So now we know all buildings should be zero-emission buildings by 2050. But there are also steps in between. Some countries already foresee boiler bans from 2030 to 35 on. And of course, you're not allowed to install fossil fuel boilers after that. So all of these steps in between are already inside IB Road to EPC. So you can say you maneuver your way through the through the obligations, and you're on the good side. You know what your building has to fulfill, and you can prepare for that. Yes, and the last point is, what do I have to pay attention to in a technical way? So especially when you do renovations step by step, you have to prepare later steps while you're doing the earlier steps. You're not even thinking about your roof, But if in the first step you can prepare that your roof in the next but one step will reach a higher quality, and that's especially for the joints of building components, or airtightness is something that you cannot build at once. You have to make all joints airtight, or thermal bridges, to achieve one meaningful whole in the end. So these are the core questions we want to answer, and I start simply by what does it look like. So IB Road to EPC is, you could say, an annex to the regular EPC. It's an extra page we add, and in that extra page there's an individual URL and a QR code, but this is usually what you get as a customer. And if you follow that URL, you're guided to the online page, the individual online page for that building. The good thing having it online is, of course, it is dynamical, because if, say, circumstances or boundary conditions change, we can have that actual in the IB Road to EPC in the online version. If it's printed on paper, then it it will be not up to date. Yes. And if we dive into what we see on that screen, the main page, the overview page we will get to, is this. This is really the long-term plan, and we see the present building state on the left, and we get to these predefined time steps that are in there. Here it's just the decades, and we have one time step that says, okay, do that very soon or as soon as possible. And we see everything we change in the building turns green. So if we do the facade in the first step, then it's green, and also the windows, and in another step the roof is renovated. So ideally in the final step, all building components turn green. And we also have this information on the one hand for the building, so that's information on the building envelope, but you see it's not very detailed. It's just roof, walls, windows, and the cellar. So that's the altitude that we're flying. And also we have these icons, and they represent the technical building equipment. And also they turn green with every step. Then, of course, we have the description of the steps. So when should it be and what is happening in the steps. But here in the overview, it's only a very brief description of that. And for every step, we have, of course, a detail page explaining exactly what should be renovated, which component, what is it, the renovation depth. Here we see insulation thickness or U value aligned with LTRS or NBRP. And we see all this additional information. So are there requirements? So, and if there are, maybe there is something saying, if you have a building that has to fulfill the maps, then watch out, from 2030 on, you might have to be in class F. And also you see these notes saying, okay, build it in a meaningful way, prepare in step 1 already for step 3 or for step 2, so to tailor the building as a meaningful whole. I said we can adapt IB Road to EPC to country requirements. We can make it more, could say, complicated, or put more information in there. We also can keep it very to the very basic information only, and we do that with extra modules, so you can add them, but you can also skip them. The modules, they don't depend on another. And what the modules do is they always add another page looking exactly the same as with the green buildings. And now my mouse pointer is gone. And these arrows down here, they are replaced for every module with the respective arrows. So if we have the module for energy demand, GHG emissions, and energy cost, this information will be placed in the arrows. And of course, this causes extra effort, will certainly raise the price of IB Road to EPC. Something that many countries ask for is the cost, the investment cost for the for renovations. We split that cost up in maintenance cost, as we call it, so things that have to be done anyway. So you have to renew the plaster on the walls anyway, but the insulation is the energy related part of that. So we split that up, and also funding. We also included the indoor environmental quality, because yes, it's getting more and more important. People get their motivation for renovating very strongly from indoor environmental quality, from improvement here. And you can see how the renovations, the energy renovations, improve the indoor environmental quality. So we can also display that, and also the smart readiness indicator. We can also include it into the plan. But again, this is optional. You don't have to have that, but you can, you can combine it the way it fits best in one country. Yes, to process or issue IB Road to EPC, we have an online tool, an assistant tool, and of course, this is for the issuers, for the energy experts. But here's very briefly how they work on that, and you see again the same questions, because yes, this is the red thread we're trying to work through. So one thing was that what to do, the description of measures, and the tool enables them to just choose them from a menu. The question when, they take it from the menu and they assign this measure, this renovation measure, to a certain decade, to a certain time step. So they're very easy to work on. The question how, so the U values or insulation thicknesses, this comes automatically. This comes just from a database, country-specific values, and they're filled in just into the text. Also automatically, all these, not only national legislation, but also European legislation, so targets in 2050 or in between, this is all automatically there. And if it changes, of course, it can be updated. And also these texts, how to prevent lock-in situations, or how to prepare for later renovation steps, even they come automatically, and they are just derived from that order. So the program just looks up which measure is first and which measures come later, and from this order or sequence, it derives these text blocks. This is what the tool itself looks like, and you see just the steps, and you can go into each step and edit the respective values. So this is quite easy, but of course we say no energy expert should work with it on his own, but always receive training before that. And here we see just an example of how these preparation text blocks might look like. So in this case, we see the heat generator is replaced with a heat pump, and we already know in a later step the walls will be insulated, and then the heat pump will still be there. So once the walls are insulated, the heat pump will be too big to have too much power for the building then. So, but if you know that from the start, you can choose the adjusted kind of heat pump with the right capacity, and in the end save money for the heat pump itself, but also it will run more efficiently if you think of that already at the start. This assistant tool, this online assistant tool, it has a certain or several ways to be coupled with existing tools, because that was what we were aiming for, to put it best into the existing say ecosystem of tools. And okay, of course it has to have one standard front end. So if there's nothing else in one country, you can operate this assistant tool, and it operates via an API interface. But this is intentionally an API because this can also exchange data with, for example, the country-specific EPC software. And this is, say, our main focus, because energy experts usually work with the EPC software, and they're in there anyway. And if we can include it there, and we have to include some extra questions there, but the issuer, they don't even notice that there's something going on in behind. It's just this API request sent to the assistant, and the answer is received, and everything else is inside the EPC software. So this was the initial thought, but the API also enables us to couple that with any other platform. So if there's a one-stop shop or an online platform, you can also couple it with this. You still have to have these data entry possibilities. And it's again the same. The API request goes in there, and the answer comes back and can display the results. But many countries still don't have API or have other interfaces anyway. So what's there in some countries is an XML interface or also an Excel interface. And currently we are testing both of them. This is only one way. So of course, Excel will not receive the results from the assistant, but what Excel can do is take the data from the EPC software, because you entered a lot of data anyway to calculate the EPC, and everything that's there can be put into the IB Road to EPC assistant and does not have to be entered again. So it's already pre-filled, and for the issuer, it's easier to process then. So that was the idea, to have it as flexible as possible and trying to adapt to what is already there. Yes, and that's the slide from the start. We tried to contribute to these connections and to align these tools as good as we can, because we see, of course, it will not work if every element goes in another direction. I think the main part is the NBRP, so that's the overarching strategy, and it has to be broken down to single buildings, and the other elements, they enable, of course, communication with building owners, and that's really important. And this is one part we see, or one role that IB Road to EPC can play, just communicate what the NBRP foresees, and guide building owners along that way. There's still the digital building logbook. I haven't spoken about that yet. Of course, it can be taken in, we can address it with IB Road to EPC also. Usually, if there's a logbook already, it has certain features, and we would have to see how IB Road to EPC would fit in there. Still, we have a lot of ideas. If countries don't have a digital logbook by now, we would say, okay, let's combine it from the start, because this brings a lot of opportunities. So yes, it should not be forgotten in these elements. It's really important, but at the moment it's not in the focus of IB Road to EPC. So I think that's the last slide, and I thank you very much for your attention. And to be honest, I couldn't see the chat in the meantime, but I'm looking forward for your questions.